A 7-year-old homeless boy heard two babies crying behind a locked gate. He knew if he went closer, he'd be blamed. He knew poor kids don't get questions, only punishment. But the crying didn't stop. And when the millionaire returned, he wasn't ready for what his eyes would see. Before we dive in, comment below where you're watching from, and let's begin. The city was already awake, but it did not notice him. Cars moved past in long, shining lines. Gates opened for some and stayed closed for others. On the sidewalk near the edge of a wealthy neighborhood, a 7-year-old boy sat quietly under the shadow of a tall stone wall. His name was Eli, but no one around here knew that. To most people, he was just another street child, easy to ignore, easier to forget. Eli's feet were bare, dusty from walking since early morning. His shirt was too big, once white, now faded into a tired gray. The sleeves hung past his elbows and the collar was torn slightly on one side. He kept pulling it back up, a habit he had learned after people stared too long. His shorts were thin, not enough for cold mornings, but Eli had learned not to complain. Complaining never brought food. Silence sometimes did. He wasn't begging. He wasn't stealing. He was just sitting, waiting. Waiting for what? Even he did not know. Across the street rose a tall iron gate, black and heavy, decorated with golden lines that curved like quiet warnings. Beyond it stood a massive house hidden behind green hedges and tall trees. Everything inside looked clean, calm, protected. Water flowed gently from a stone fountain. Flowers bloomed in perfect rows. It was a world that felt far away from Eli's life, even though it was only a few steps across the road. Eli felt thirsty. His mouth was dry, his tongue heavy. He had not had water since the night before. He thought maybe, just maybe, there might be a tap somewhere near the wall. Sometimes rich houses had outside water for gardeners. Sometimes guards chased him away before he could even ask. Still, thirst pushed him forward. He stood up slowly, brushing dust from his legs, and walked along the wall, careful not to look suspicious. He kept his eyes down, the way he always did near places like this. Rich areas were dangerous for poor kids, not because of animals or traffic, but because of people. Then he heard it. At first, it sounded like the wind, a soft sound, broken, unsteady. Eli stopped walking. He listened. There it was again. A cry, not one cry, two, high-pitched, desperate, the kind of crying that didn't stop to breathe, the kind that meant fear had taken over. Eli's chest tightened. He knew that sound. He had heard it in shelters, in dark corners, in places where no one came quickly enough. The sound was coming from inside the gate. Eli moved closer, his heart beating faster now. He stood on his toes and carefully peeked through the iron bars. What he saw made his breath catch. On the wide green lawn, near a small garden bench, were two babies. Twin babies. They were sitting on a soft blanket, their small bodies shaking as they cried. One had fallen slightly onto his side, his tiny hands clawing at the grass. The other was sitting upright, face red, mouth open wide, crying so hard that his body trembled. Their clothes were clean, light-colored, expensive. Everything about them said they belonged somewhere safe. But no one was with them, no adults, no guards, no voices calling their names, just two babies crying alone in a world too big for them. Eli's stomach twisted. No, he whispered to himself, not here. He stepped back from the gate immediately. This was bad, very bad. Poor kids were not supposed to be near rich kids. Poor kids were not supposed to touch anything behind gates like this. Eli knew the rules, even though no one had ever written them down. If something went wrong, it would be his fault. If someone saw him near those babies, they would not ask why he was there. They would not listen. They would accuse. Eli pressed his back against the stone wall, breathing fast. He told himself to walk away. He had done it before. Walk away. Survive. That was how you stayed alive in the city. But the crying didn't stop. It grew louder. One baby coughed between sobs, his small chest shaking too hard. The other let out a sharp, broken cry that sounded almost painful. Eli covered his ears. "Stop," he whispered. "Please stop." But the babies didn't stop. They couldn't. Eli's mind filled with a memory he tried very hard to forget. A dark hallway, a thin blanket, a younger child crying beside him once, long ago. Crying until the sound became quiet, not because someone came, but because the child had no strength left. Eli's hands began to shake. He looked back at the gate. The babies were still there, alone. "If I go," he whispered, "they'll blame me." His feet stayed frozen. Another cough. The baby on the ground started to choke on his own crying, his tiny face turning darker red. His arms flailed weakly. Eli felt something break inside his chest. That was it. He couldn't listen anymore. "I won't take anything," Eli whispered to the empty air. "I won't stay. I'll just help them stop crying." He reached through the gate, pushing gently. To his surprise, it wasn't locked. The iron gate opened just enough for him to slip inside. The grass felt strange under his bare feet, soft, cool, unreal. Eli walked slowly, every step heavy with fear. His eyes kept flying to the house, expecting someone to shout at him. No one did. The babies saw him. At first, they froze. Then one reached out his tiny hand. The crying didn't stop, but it changed. It became urgent, like they were asking him something, like they were begging. Eli dropped to his knees a short distance away, raising his hands slowly so they could see he wasn't dangerous. "Hey," he said softly. His voice shook. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." The baby on the ground crawled toward him, almost falling again. Eli moved closer, careful, gentle. He remembered how shelter workers handled babies. Slow movements, calm voice. He sat cross-legged on the grass. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're not alone." One twin grabbed the edge of Eli's shirt with surprising strength. The crying slowed for half a second. The other baby leaned forward, still sobbing, but watching Eli closely. Eli swallowed hard. He didn't pick them up right away. He waited. He let them come to him. Slowly, he placed one baby upright, supporting his back with his small arm. He rocked gently, side to side, humming a quiet tune he barely remembered. The crying softened into hiccups. The other baby crawled closer and leaned against Eli's leg, still crying, but less now. Eli kept humming. The world felt quiet for a moment. Then, "What is going on here?" The shout exploded across the lawn. Eli froze. His heart dropped straight into his stomach. Footsteps rushed toward them. The babies startled and cried again. Eli lifted his hands immediately, panic flooding his face. I didn't take them," he said quickly, his voice shaking. "They were crying. I just wanted to." A tall man in a dark suit stormed into view, his face pale with fear and anger. Behind him, staff members and guards followed, their eyes locking instantly onto Eli. The man's gaze went straight to the twins. Then slowly, it moved to the small boy sitting on the grass between them. And everything changed. For a moment, no one moved. The twins cried harder now, startled by the sudden noise, their small bodies shaking as fear returned all at once. The sound cut through the air like glass breaking. Eli felt it hit his chest before anything else did. He didn't look at the guards. He didn't look at the house. His eyes stayed on the babies. He gently shifted closer to them, careful not to touch too fast. "It's okay," he whispered, even though his own voice trembled. "It's okay. Don't be scared." He knew fear. He knew how fast it could swallow someone small. The man in the suit, tall, sharp, powerful, stood frozen a few steps away. His eyes were locked on the twins, scanning them the way people scan something precious they almost lost. His breathing was uneven. One hand was clenched so tight that his knuckles had turned white. A guard stepped forward instinctively. "Stop," the man said sharply. The guard froze mid-step. Eli heard that word and flinched anyway. His shoulders tightened and he slowly lifted both hands into the air, palms open. It was a move he had learned without being taught. A move that said, "I am not a threat." A move that never fully worked. "I didn't take anything," Eli said quickly. "I swear, I didn't come for them. I was just—" His voice cracked. He swallowed and tried again. They were crying. The man's eyes flicked toward Eli for the first time. Really looked at him. Noticed the bare feet on perfect grass. The oversized shirt hanging off a thin frame. The dirt under the fingernails. The way the boy sat straight like he was bracing for impact. "How long?" the man asked suddenly. Eli blinked. "Sir?" "How long were they crying?" the man repeated, his voice quieter now, tighter. Eli glanced at the twins, who were now crawling toward him again, reaching out with shaking hands. "I don't know. Long enough to get scared." The man closed his eyes briefly. Behind him, a woman, likely a caregiver, stepped forward nervously. "Sir, I was only gone for a moment. I was answering a call. I didn't think—" "That's enough," the man said, not raising his voice but cutting her off completely. Eli felt the twins press against his legs. One of them grabbed his finger tightly, like letting go would mean falling into something endless. The crying slowed, turning into broken breaths. The other baby leaned against Eli's knee, still whimpering, but calmer. Everyone saw it. The twins were calmer near the boy they didn't know. The man noticed, too. He took a step closer, slowly, carefully, like one wrong move might shatter something fragile. "Are they hurt?" he asked. "No," Eli said immediately. "I didn't let them fall. I didn't move them far. I just sat." "Did anyone else come near them?" "No." "Did you touch their faces?" "No, sir." Each answer came fast, honest, almost desperate. The man studied Eli's face. There was fear there, yes, but also something else. Focus, care, the kind that didn't belong to someone trying to do harm. The twins suddenly laughed. It was small at first. One of them made a soft sound, almost a giggle, as Eli shifted his weight so they wouldn't slip. Then the other laughed too, loud and surprised, like joy had caught him off guard. The sound stunned everyone. The man's mouth parted slightly. He hadn't heard that sound in days, maybe weeks. Eli smiled without realizing it. It wasn't a big smile, just a small curve of relief, like something heavy had loosened inside him. "Easy," Eli murmured softly. "No pulling, that hurts." The babies laughed again, grabbing his shirt, his finger, his sleeve, anything that felt steady. The man felt something tighten painfully in his chest. "Why didn't you run?" he asked suddenly. Eli looked up at him, confused. "Run?" "Yes," the man said. "Most kids would have run when they saw us coming." Eli thought for a second, then he shrugged. "They were scared. I didn't want them to think everyone leaves." Silence fell over the lawn. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. The man knelt down slowly until he was eye level with the twins, and with Eli. Up close, Eli could see the exhaustion in the man's face. Not the tiredness of work, but the tiredness of someone who carried too much alone. The man reached out carefully, letting the twins see him first. One of them looked at him, then immediately turned back to Eli and clutched his shirt again. The man stopped. He didn't pull them away. "Do they make that sound often?" he asked quietly. Eli nodded. "When no one comes." The man looked at the house behind him. Big, quiet, full of people, yet empty in the wrong places. "What's your name?" he asked. Eli hesitated. Names were dangerous. Names made things real. Names made people remember you. "Eli," he said finally. The man repeated it once, softly, like he was testing the weight of it. "Eli." One of the twins reached out and touched the man's sleeve, then quickly went back to Eli. The message was clear, even if no one wanted to say it out loud. The babies trusted the boy with nothing more than kindness. The man stood up slowly and turned to the guards. "Step back," he said. They obeyed immediately. Then he looked back at Eli. "You didn't have to do this," he said. Eli looked down at the twins, who were now calm, breathing slowly, their hands still wrapped around him. "I know," he replied. The man studied him for a long moment, and for the first time since that morning, the fear in Eli's chest wasn't the loudest thing anymore. It was curiosity. The man did not raise his voice again. That alone frightened Eli more than shouting ever could. Silence spread across the garden, heavy and uncomfortable, broken only by the soft breathing of the twins. One baby rested his head against Eli's knee. The other sucked his thumb, eyes half closed, exhaustion finally winning. The crying had stopped, but its echo remained in the air, like something everyone was pretending not to hear anymore. The man stood with his hands at his sides, staring at the scene as if it didn't belong to the life he knew. Expensive shoes on green grass, guards waiting for orders, a barefoot child sitting between his twin sons like he had always been there. "What were you doing here before you heard them?" the man asked. His voice was calm, controlled, not accusing, not kind either. Eli felt his throat tighten. He chose his words carefully. Poor kids learned early that the wrong sentence could cost everything. "I was looking for water," he said. "I wasn't planning to come inside." The man nodded slowly, as if that answer matched something in his mind. "And if you hadn't heard them?" "I would have left." "Even though you were thirsty?" Eli shrugged. "I get thirsty a lot." The answer landed harder than Eli expected. The man turned away for a moment, rubbing his face with one hand. When he turned back, something had shifted. The sharp edge in his eyes was still there, but behind it was something unfamiliar: doubt. "Most people wouldn't risk stepping inside a place like this," the man said. "Especially not a child." Eli didn't look up. "Most people don't hear that kind of crying and walk away," he replied softly. No one corrected him. A woman standing near the edge of the garden cleared her throat nervously. "Sir, we should call someone. The police, perhaps. This situation—" "No," the man said immediately. The word came out stronger than before. Everyone froze. He looked at Eli again. "Are you scared right now?" Eli nodded. He didn't see the point in lying. "Yes." "Then why are you still sitting here?" Eli looked down at the twins. One of them stirred slightly, fingers curling tighter around the fabric of Eli's shirt. The boy felt the small pull, the quiet request not to disappear. "Because they are," Eli said. The man inhaled sharply. He crouched down again, this time closer, close enough that Eli could see the fine lines around his eyes, the kind that didn't come from smiling often. "How old are you?" the man asked. 7. "And where do you live?" Eli hesitated. This was the question that always changed things. "Anywhere that lets me stay," he said. "Sometimes nowhere." The man closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them again, his gaze drifted to the twins, clean, fed, protected, and then back to Eli. "Do you go to school?" he asked. Eli shook his head. "Not anymore." "Why not?" "They said I needed papers." Silence returned. The man straightened slowly and looked around the garden, at the house, at the guards, at the people paid to protect everything inside the gate. Then he looked at the boy who had crossed it, with nothing but fear and kindness. "You could have been hurt," the man said quietly. Eli nodded again. "I know." "Then why do it?" Eli thought about that for a moment, really thought. Then he answered honestly, "Because if I didn't, no one would know they were scared." The words settled deep. One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. The woman looked away. The man remained still. What do you think happens to kids like you? The man asked slowly. When people assume the worst. Eli met his eyes for the first time. They stop asking for help. The man felt something break inside him. He had spent his life believing the world was divided into problems that could be solved and risks that had to be controlled. This boy was neither. He was a mirror. The twins stirred again, one letting out a small sound. Eli instinctively adjusted his position, shielding them from the sun with his body. The man noticed, not instinct, attention, care. Stand down, he said quietly to everyone behind him. All of you. They obeyed without question. Then he looked at Eli and spoke words no one had ever said to him before. You did the right thing. Eli blinked. He wasn't sure he had heard correctly. I said, the man repeated, you did the right thing. The words felt strange in Eli's ears, heavy, dangerous, hopeful. The twins opened their eyes and smiled sleepily, and for the first time that day, Eli didn't feel like he was about to be pushed away. He felt like someone was finally seeing him. The sun had climbed higher, but the garden felt colder than before. Eli sat still, afraid that if he moved too much, the moment would break. The twins leaned against him now, quiet and tired, their earlier fear replaced by soft breathing and tiny movements. One of them traced circles on Eli's sleeve with a small finger as if memorizing him. Eli didn't pull away. The man watched this in silence. For the first time, he wasn't thinking like a businessman, a homeowner, or a man with power. He was thinking like a father who had almost failed without realizing it. You said you don't have a place, the man finally said. How long has that been true? Eli swallowed. Talking about this always felt like stepping onto thin ice. A long time, he replied, long enough that days don't really matter anymore. The man nodded slowly. Do you have family? Eli hesitated again. He looked down at the twins instead of answering. Their warmth grounded him. I had a mom, he said quietly. She tried, she really did. No one interrupted. She worked when she could. She smiled when she was tired. When things went bad, she said we just had to keep going. Eli paused, his voice growing softer. Then one day she didn't come back, and after that, people stopped asking about her. The garden felt very still. What about someone else? The man asked gently. Anyone who looks for you? Eli shook his head. I don't think so. The man felt a sharp ache in his chest. He had lost people too, but never like this, never into silence. Does anyone know where you are at night? The man continued. Eli shrugged. I know. That answer said everything. The twins shifted again, one letting out a small sound, not fear this time, just restlessness. Eli adjusted his arms naturally, shielding them from the breeze, humming under his breath without realizing it. The man noticed the hum. What's that song? He asked. Eli looked embarrassed. I don't know, my mom used to hum it. I forgot the words. The man closed his eyes briefly. Behind him, the house stood tall and quiet. Inside were rooms full of light, food, comfort, and loneliness he had never admitted out loud. You understand them, the man said. Eli shrugged again. Babies don't know words yet. They just know when someone stays. The words hit hard. The man knelt down slowly, closer than before. Do you know what people might think if they saw you here? Eli nodded. They'd think I was doing something bad. And what do you think? The man asked. Eli met his eyes. I think they were scared, and now they're not. Silence returned, not heavy this time, but thoughtful. The man took a deep breath. I'm going to ask you something important, he said, and I want you to know there's no wrong answer. Eli stiffened slightly. If someone helped you, the man continued, not to take you away, not to control you, but to make sure you were safe, would you accept it? Eli's heart began to race. This was the kind of question that changed things, the kind that came with rules, papers, people who smiled and then disappeared. "What happens if I say yes?" Eli asked. "Then people listen," the man said honestly. "Really listen. And if I say no?" "Then you leave with food, water, shoes," the man replied. "And no one stops you." Eli thought about the street, the cold nights, the hunger that came back every morning. He thought about how the twins had reached for him without fear. "I don't want to disappear," he said finally. The man nodded. "Then you won't." One of the twins suddenly laughed softly in his sleep, a sound so small it almost wasn't real. Eli smiled before he could stop himself. The man stood up and turned to the others. "I want a social worker," he said, "an independent one, now." No one argued. Then he looked back at Eli. "You didn't save them alone," he said, "but you were the first to notice. That matters." Eli felt something warm spread through his chest. Not relief, not excitement. Belonging. The twins stirred again, waking slowly. Their eyes opened, unfocused at first, then settled on Eli. Both smiled. Eli smiled back, and in that moment something quietly changed for all of them. Not because of money, not because of power, but because one small boy chose not to walk away. The twins woke slowly, the way babies do when they feel safe. One blinked, then the other. Their small hands moved, searching. When they felt Eli's shirt, they relaxed again, soft sounds leaving their mouths like tiny sighs. Eli stayed still, afraid that even breathing too loudly might break the moment. The man watched this quietly. He had built companies from nothing. He had made decisions that affected thousands of people. But nothing had ever felt as fragile or as important as the sight in front of him now. "You're very gentle," he said. Eli didn't answer right away. "I learned by watching," he said finally. "If you move too fast, people think you're leaving." The man felt that sentence sit in his chest. A car pulled up near the gate. A woman stepped out, calm, professional, carrying a small folder. She walked toward them without rushing, without staring. She knelt down a few steps away so she wouldn't tower over Eli. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm here to talk, if that's okay." Eli nodded. No one grabbed him. No one ordered him to stand. No one treated him like a problem to solve. The twins reached toward the woman briefly, then back to Eli again, as if making a quiet decision of their own. "They trust him," the woman said gently. "Yes," the man replied, "and I want to understand why." They talked for a long time, not about blame, not about rules, about safety, about choices, about what happens after moments like this, when the cameras are gone and the world expects you to forget. Eli spoke when he could. Sometimes he stayed quiet. Sometimes he answered with a single sentence that said more than pages ever could. "I don't need much," he said at one point. "I just don't want to be invisible." The woman nodded, writing something down, not to trap him, but to remember him. The man brought water, shoes, a clean hoodie. He handed them to Eli without making a speech, without turning it into a lesson. Eli slipped the shoes on slowly. They felt strange, heavy, real. Later, the twins were taken inside to rest. They cried when Eli stood up, arms reaching for him again. The man paused at the door, surprised by his own hesitation. "Would you like to come inside for a bit?" he asked. Eli looked at the doorway. Warm light spilled out onto the grass. He had learned not to step into places like that. "Only if they want me there," he said quietly. The man looked at his sons. They reached for Eli. "That's your answer," the man said. That day didn't end with miracles. Eli wasn't adopted on the spot. Everything wasn't fixed overnight. Life didn't suddenly become easy. But something important happened. Eli didn't disappear. He was enrolled in school. He was placed somewhere safe, with people who knew his name and said it often. The man didn't vanish after one good deed. He stayed involved, not as a hero, but as a responsibility. And the twins. They remembered. Weeks later, when Eli visited, they crawled toward him the same way they had that first day, without fear, without judgment, just trust. The man watched them and finally understood something he had missed for too long. Protection isn't walls, security isn't money, safety is being seen when you cry. That morning in the garden changed 3 lives, not because someone powerful acted, but because a small boy chose not to walk away.
This story reminds us that real courage isn't about power or money. It's about caring when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories that prove kindness can change lives.